Hello and welcome to everyone. Brian Zane here with a new edition of This Week in Regret, the show where I give my thoughts on all the biggest goings on in wrestling from the last 7 days. We have a lot to talk about this week, so let's dive in. Well, AEW is celebrating what they're calling an instant sellout for their joint venture with New Japan, the Forbidden Door pay-per-view at the United Center in Chicago. The Ticketmaster pre-sale took place Thursday, and in less than an hour, all those seats were gone. 11,000 and change. No, I'm not talking about the number of tickets sold. That's the going rate for some of these front row seats in the resale market. Yikes! Seriously, it was so popular between Thursday and Friday when they released a couple thousand more tickets that a lot of hopeful ticket buyers were shut out from the get-go in those online queues. This, of course, despite the fact that AEW has not announced a single match for the show. There are some folks out there who would blame scalpers for the fast ticket sales, but to the people running the show, a ticket sold is a ticket sold no matter who's buying it. And when you consider that argument was made last year for the show that CM Punk saw his debut in the same building, even though it was only a rumor at the time, if you look at the crowd there, it wasn't a bunch of scalpers packing that building, it was a bunch of fans. And I think the same thing's going to happen here at the Forbidden Door show. It turns out that if a company gives fans what they want on a consistent basis, those same fans will be much more proactive in buying things for the future. Who knew? Moving on to Women of Wrestling, the women's league that was revived last year, seemingly with the intent to rehabilitate Tessa Blanchard's image, may be moving forward without Tessa Blanchard. It was reported by Sean Ross Sapp earlier this week that Blanchard may already be on the outs with WoW due to her demeanor and backstage behavior. Now, it's important to note that a lot of the biggest accusations in this report can't be verified due to apparent non-disclosure agreements, but the report also says that she is no longer a creative or casting director with the show, as was originally announced when WoW was revived. I just want to say this right now, I called it at the end of last year. So is WoW being revived for the good of women's wrestling or for just one wrestling woman? Hard to say for sure at this point, but by building their company around someone as controversial and toxic as Tessa, this rebuilt version of WoW may already be on loose foundation. If the report is true, what does it say about Tessa that a rift like this would exist in what is essentially her own promotion? If she can't find work in WoW, where is she going to find work at this point? It's kind of a crazy thought to think about considering how talented Tessa is in the ring. I certainly hope WoW can continue with or without Tessa. I've always said more work for more wrestlers is always a good thing, so hopefully WoW will still succeed. Actor and former WWE writer Freddie Prinze Jr. has made it clear he wants to start his own wrestling promotion. He spilled the beans this past week on his own podcast, Wrestling with Freddie, said he's been returning to acting with the goal of taking that money and putting it toward this wrestling project. He said he wants to get the project off the ground at 18 months. He says he wants to give equal time to men and to women, but one of the things that really caught my eye, or my ear I guess, is the fact that he wants the wrestlers to be unionized with the Screen Actors Guild. Now, I've made it known on this channel for a very long time how I feel about unionization in wrestling. An industry-wide union may be a bit far-fetched, but unions in individual promotions might provide a good template for the future. Either way, the news is pretty exciting. Prinze obviously very passionate about pro wrestling, so you can imagine that with the right kind of money and platform behind it, that maybe the project could succeed. But of course, it's all very much a wait-and-see kind of vibe right now if he's waiting a year and a half for things to take off. So again, we'll wait and see. Stay tuned. Dark Side of the Ring has been canceled, or has it? It was first reported this past week that the Vice TV docuseries would not be picked up for a 4th season. The show's covered a lot of controversial topics in wrestling, but this past season got the biggest flack after their infamous Plane Ride from Hell episode, which among other things led to a lot of heat on Ric Flair and Jim Ross declaring he would no longer work with them because he felt his words were taken out of context. But rumors of the show's death were greatly exaggerated. Soon after those first reports surfaced, Vice TV themselves went to clear the air on Twitter saying, quote, "We are as committed as ever to both the series and the broader Dark Side franchise." So I guess that means we'll be seeing more episodes popping up in the future, which I'm always excited for. I do appreciate the Dark Side series. A lot of those episodes still resonate with me. There's also reports the showrunners might be working on a show based on the Territory system, which has me very excited. What are some of your favorite Dark Side episodes in the past 3 seasons? Let me know in the comments section. This week, Candice LeRae's WWE contract expired. She was taken off TV several months ago and gave birth to her and Johnny Gargano's child back in February. Now, Candice joins her husband on the free agent list. Best of luck to the Garganos with everything in their future, and the same goes for the several WWE wrestlers who were cut last Friday. At this point, I've kind of become numb to the mass releases we've been seeing since 2020, but what truly shocks me is how many people they're cutting who were actively involved in storylines at the time. I mean, Harland was just hanging around with Joe Gacy leading up to Spring Breakin'. He helped him kidnap Rick Steiner, for God's sake. Then he's gone right before that show, and now he's replaced with other masked stooges. How do you look at that guy and not see dollar signs? Dakota Kai, a brilliant performer, really holding down the women's division in NXT for a long time as other women were getting called up. It seemed the main roster was calling her name, but for whatever reason, she gone now. But I think that, not to worry for her, because from what I'm seeing, it seems that the women's scene in the independents, AEW, and Impact, among others, are just doing great right now on a real upturn. I think she'll find a great place to land no matter where she goes. They cut Dexter Lumis, aka Sam Shaw, which was kind of a surprise considering he was still in this big kayfabe marriage with Indy Hartwell, who is still there. Now they have to explain why he's gone and she's still there. And also, Index was one of the best things about NXT last year, so it blows my mind they would break them up. Persia Parada, also known as Steph DeLander, another name I'm kind of surprised got cut here. She was pretty prevalent on TV for months, tagging with her friend Indy Hartwell. And speaking of Indy, between Persia being gone, Theory, Dexter, Gargano, and Candice LeRae, the whole way is gone now. What does Indy have left? And one of the other big cuts that surprised me was Malcolm Bivens, aka Stokely Hathaway, who was part of the Diamond Mine, but like so many other members of that group, now has fallen by the wayside. I think he was one of the best parts of NXT in the last year, not just on TV, but also on social media. He's been a blast to watch. I love his promos. From one manager to another, I think he's one that people should study, but I do believe Stokely Hathaway will return to do great things soon enough wherever he lands. It sounds like there are plans to do these mass cuts every 90 days, somewhat of a trial period where they have a chance to look at the wrestlers before they decide to keep them or cut them. That's kind of a scary proposition when I hear that story, because if you're a newcomer with no wrestling experience and you're being brought into the Performance Center, how fast do you need to advance and get it before you're ultimately cut? They're kind of expecting, it seems like, everyone to have a Kurt Angle-like attitude to wrestling. That's the vibe I get from that report, which I think is kind of unfair and kind of unsettling when wrestling is a long process to get used to and to learn and to get the mechanics and the physics and the physicality of it. You can't just teach that in 90 days and expect people to get it or not. It's a process for a lot of people. So doing the 90-day thing, I mean, I don't know, it seems weird to me. One individual who has not yet been released despite requesting it is Roderick Strong. It's a very similar sounding story to what was going on with Mustafa Ali, where he requested the release and was denied it and then was taken off TV for a long time. And frankly, when you're cutting wrestlers left and right for whatever arbitrary reason or because they're lines on a budget sheet or something, to hold on to a wrestler that you're not doing anything with, it just seems very petty and spiteful and unfair to do that to somebody who at their core is still an independent contractor. But don't get me started on all that. Speaking of Mustafa Ali though, he did show up on TV again recently to feud with The Miz. We'll have to see where that ends up and seeing if that's going to be a roadmap to what Roderick Strong can expect if he's still in the company for much longer. Shifting gears over to New Japan for a moment, the Best of the Super Juniors 29 round-robin tournament is going to be happening beginning on May 15th, and this past week they announced the participants and the blocks. Take a look at these guys here. Such great talent. You got Takahashi, Yo, Taguchi, Clark Connors, Ace Austin, TJP, and many more. As for the outcomes, now I can't say I know everything about all the participants in this event, but I do like Alex Zane's chances in Block A. I think he'd be doing great to move on to the finals, and I feel the same way about Wheeler Yuta in Block B, especially considering all the hype and the momentum he's been getting in AEW/ROH. Who do you think's going to make the finals? Let me know in the comments. And speaking of New Japan, Bullet Club turns 9 years old this week. Let's give a shout out to this deeply influential stable that not only launched 1 million parody shirts, but has featured some of wrestling's biggest stars of the last decade. And of course, through Bullet Club, we got the Elite, which, well, we all know how that's been turning out. Also, Finn and AJ did the thing this past Monday. Yay! Wrestlemania Backlash takes place this Sunday on Peacock, and it's time for me to give you my predictions for this premium live event. Beginning with Happy Corbin versus Madcap Moss, the former protege/goon, what have you, of Happy Corbin. He's broken off from him, he's turned babyface, and he wants to show Corbin who's the real boss here. But my gut feeling tells me Corbin's going to win this first encounter, kind of put Madcap in his place early on to hopefully build up to some kind of rematch down the line. I've been saying for the last couple of months now, I really have enjoyed Riddick Moss's work over the years. I think he just needs the right kind of gimmick or platform to really be successful, and hopefully this angle here will be the start of something good for him. Bobby Lashley takes on Omos in a rematch from WrestleMania last month, and the key difference here is that MVP has now aligned himself with the bigger man, with Omos here, and that of course creates a very, what I would call an obvious harmonious dynamic of MVP helping Omos to beat Lashley here. I can't imagine Omos loses this one, because if he loses 2 in a row to Lashley, then I think he's cooked and he's done for. But him getting this win here, I said from the get-go when MVP joined up with him that I think it would be good for Omos especially. Lash, I think, is in a good place now as a babyface where he doesn't need a mouthpiece, but I think that this is going to be an outcome where he helps put Omos over in a big way. Another WrestleMania rematch as AJ Styles takes on Edge, and this time Damian Priest banned from ringside, so no shenanigans from him. I think it's going to be another good match with these two guys. They definitely have a standard I'd like to uphold. I think this will be another Edge victory here. Even though Damian Priest is barred from ringside, they obviously have to get this new evil spooky Edge gimmick over, and for him to lose so soon after it's kind of started to blossom doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. To me, the entire match boils down to a single question. Is someone new going to join Edge's stable and help him win the match? There's been rumors and speculation and a lot of fantasy booking for the last several weeks as to who could join Edge's group and make it more powerful. I'm not going to begin to speculate on who it could be, but my gut feeling is that that's what's going to happen to help Edge win the match. In another WrestleMania rematch, Cody Rhodes will battle Seth Rollins, and this time Seth will be prepared for his opponent. I think these two are going to have another great match like they did in Dallas, and I'm really curious how they're going to go with this one, because if you want Cody to get over as a big star right at the get-go, you got to have him win match after match. I don't really want to see Seth lose again to Cody here or lose another high-profile matchup, because he's been doing that a lot as of late, but I think he's going to have to win this one, because then it'll get us the inevitable third epic matchup. Hell in a Cell's right around the corner. I can imagine there being a big blow-off there, and those two are very good at having very emotional matches, the body language, the facial expressions. They can tell a story like that, and I think those two would be great in Hell in a Cell, but you can't have that justification without having Rollins win the second matchup. So my feeling here is that Seth is going to win match number 2, leading to the rubber match. And in another WrestleMania rematch, you have Charlotte Flair defending the SmackDown Women's title against Ronda Rousey in an I Quit match. I think the escalation going from a regular match at WrestleMania to the one with the stipulation here is a smart choice. I think I Quit definitely feels more like Ronda's wheelhouse, her being the submission-based wrestler. I do believe she is going to win this match, by the way, and become the new SmackDown Women's Champion. It's going to be an okay match. I mean, like, their match at Mania was a lot better, I think, than people give it credit for, but I still wasn't in love with it. So hopefully this added stipulation will make things more interesting. And finally, this bullshit 6-man tag match as the Bloodline take on Drew McIntyre and RK Bro, and there will be no titles on the line. It will not be winner take all. It's just going to be a 6-man tag match. So they did away with the tag title unification storyline, and Roman, for whatever reason, whether he's hurt or not, he's not defending either of those championships he won at WrestleMania at Mania Backlash. So this feels like a big exhibition match. It's essentially just kind of like, oh, it's like a house show match is what this thing feels like to me. So I'm not that invested in this one, especially with no stakes. But if I were, if I were to be really crazy with this one, I think this would be a great show to have that first loss for Roman Reigns. Have Drew McIntyre beat Roman Reigns. Have him pin him with a Claymore or something. It'll show that Roman Reigns is vulnerable, will give Drew McIntyre a whole lot going into it momentum-wise for their inevitable singles match for one or both of those belts. And because there's no stakes, and because it's the show that people are kind of going into with low expectations, why not have a big what the fuck moment? Have a big crazy moment of Drew pinning Roman in the middle of the ring. Hasn't been done in 2 years. Why not, all I say. But those are just my thoughts, folks. What do you think's going to happen at the show? Let me know in the comments section. But also a programming note, the WrestleMania Backlash review will be a little later getting out than normal because, not to be blunt, but to me, Mother's Day takes precedent over a premium live event such as this, so I will not be watching this show live on Sunday, probably first thing Monday morning. Time to wrap things up with my favorite thing in wrestling this week, and I gotta give the nod to William Morrissey's showing on AEW Dynamite this past week. It's great to see him come back after everything he's been through for the last several years after his release from WWE. The big seizure he had caused by alcoholism at an independent show in Philadelphia. Now he's on DDP Yoga, looking real jacked. He's working in Impact, doing well there. And then, of course, this big showing against Wardlow on Dynamite, which was pretty good for both guys. Like I said in my Dynamite review, they appreciated Morrissey being there. They gave him a bunch of cheers, not nearly as much as Wardlow, but they still appreciated him being there. So I think that Cass, Morrissey, whatever you want to call him, it's great to see him back on the mend and on the rise, his career continuing. You love to see it. I think he could be a great big man if he's used in just the right way. So I'm very happy to see Morrissey get his time to shine here on a big stage this week. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the new This Week in Regret. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. What were your favorite stories this week? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.